We are less than 3 weeks away from the trade deadline, and a lot of us are wondering what Brad Holmes and the Detroit Lions are going to do. Now, I myself feel like the Detroit Lions are going to be buyers at the trade deadline, but a lot of you don't think so, that we're just going to stand pat and not make a move. We are fine with what we have. And we both could be right, we both could be wrong, but I have a theory. I was talking to one of my guys yesterday, and I have a theory, and that is, if the Detroit Lions do trade at the trade deadline, it's because Brad Holmes doesn't think we have enough to win and go all the way this year. Not that he'll sell the farm to get someone, but that he will get someone that he can sign in the future, be a part of this team. The rebuild is over, and that he thinks that we have enough, just enough firepower to go all the way, to compete with the 49ers and beat them. Not just compete, but to beat them. And if he was to get someone, then that would be the reasoning behind that. And if he doesn't make a move, then he either feels like, my guess is if he doesn't make a move, he feels like we already have that. Now, I'll let you decide whether we have it or not in the comments below, whether you think we have it or not enough to win a Super Bowl. Now, I think we're going to be buyers. And I've said this, and I could be wrong. It happens. And if I'm wrong, that's okay. But if we're not buyers at the trade deadline, I think that we're going to make a decent move in free agency. I don't think that Brad Holmes is not going to break the bank. But what I do feel is somewhere down the line, if you look at Brad Holmes' track record, he has a track record, but I think there's a reason he has a track record, the track record that he does. If you look at when he came into the Detroit Lions, we had no money to work with. Matt Patricia had spent most of it. So we brought in what we could. Year 2, pretty much the same thing. Year 3, we had a little bit more to play with. As a matter of fact, year 3 was the most money we've had in a long time. Now entering year 4, we're going to have approximately about $65 million once we hit free agency. And I could see Brad Holmes making not necessarily like a splash, break the bank splash, but an impact player that'll be able to make a difference on this team. But I kind of just use the power of reason and what he's done before. So just because he hasn't done it before, doesn't mean to me he's not going to do it. But what I do think is he's not going to break the bank either way, right? But Brad Holmes was on the Insiders yesterday, and he said something, and I was like, man, we got to talk about this. So I'm going to bring in now Brad Holmes off the Insiders. Here's what he had to say when talking to Ian Rappaport and Tom Pelissero. Let's check it out.
We're 20 days out right now, Brad, from the trade deadline, which is way earlier in the NFL than in other sports. I know there's been conversations with the GM committee in recent years about, can we push it back a week or two? But you got to make decisions at a time where you're a perfect example. Last year, you're 1-6. No one in the world would think that you're going to make the type of run that you guys did over the second half of that season. Now you're in a position the Lions haven't been in a long time, which is, at least externally, seems like you're buyers. What's your philosophy over these next few weeks? Are you proactive in terms of calls? Are you waiting for calls to come in? How do you approach it all?
Yeah, we just kind of stick to our process regardless of what our situation is. And we just try to be real thorough, very prepared with the trade deadline. Our pro personnel department does a great job just identifying the guys around the league. And, we just have our normal process and meetings and just make sure that we're prepared to do what we need to do when it comes to that time. Now, obviously, you look forward and there's different situations. Your roster's different at different points of the year. Unfortunately, there's attrition that comes in this league that you have to prepare for. So maybe it's depth, down the road. Maybe you might need a guy to come in and be a major contributor. So you just got to be prepared for all of that. So again, like you said, there's just still time to go, but we'll be prepared for all scenarios.
All right, so you heard what he said. We'll be prepared for all scenarios. And he was very vague he's always been like that. He's never, of course he's going to be vague, but if you watch the whole interview, these guys are trying to, they living up to their name for sure. The Insiders trying to get information out of him. But me watching that, what I see is that we don't know. But I believe based on, like I said before, what he has said. And what he has said is that we are, to me, it goes all the way back to his press conference. His press conference, right as the season was kicking off, his time, like this is the first time we've seen him since the season has started. And last season, we only saw him when TJ Hawkinson was traded. So I feel that even though he was very vague there is a possibility that we are buyers at the trade deadline. But let me be clear as to what I think. There's a very kind of fine line that the Lions have to tread. And that is, if you take a guy like a Danielle Hunter, a Chase Young, a Mike Evans, a Brian Burns, they don't have contracts. So you're going to have to look at contract extensions. I do not think that the Detroit Lions are going to take a flyer for a half a year on any player, unless Brad Holmes was willing to or thought that that player would help us go to and win the Super Bowl. Okay. And if that is the case, he would only pay that player for the rest of the year. But then you would have to factor, does that player want to play on half a year? In some cases, you don't have a choice. We did it. I mean, Matt Patricia was a whole different thing, but we did it with Everson Griffin. And then that wind up being his last year. No, he went back to Minnesota after that. So while I don't think the Detroit Lions are going to do that, I do not think they're going to trade for Max Crosby, but I got to talk about it. I don't think they're going to trade for Devontae Adams, but I got to talk about it. I think that while those are less likely, a T. Higgins is less likely, somebody on an expiring contract that could not only come in for the rest of this year, but also help contribute to the next 2 or 3 years. It all depends on if Brad Holmes feels that our Super Bowl window is open. If he feels that we're almost there, then maybe he waits the free agency. He waits the free agency, locks somebody up. If he feels like it's already open, then you could have a player come to your team, be part of your team for the long term, the next 2 or 3 years, and then you go all the way then, right? So it really depends on what he feels that where the Lions are right now. And again, based off the press conference from before the season started, we're ready to compete. We're ready to win. While everyone else was saying this was year 3 of a rebuild, I was saying it wasn't. And he came in and said the same thing. And now the Detroit Lions are not only winning, but they're dominating the North. They have a 2.5 game lead right now with no signs of losing it. They also have, they got their eyes right now. We're talking about a 1, 2, 3 seed. Like that's the reality of where we are right now. And if Brad Holmes feels like that we can get that 1 seed, get that 2 seed, then he's going to make a move, but we'll see. And I'll say this, and this will be the last part of the video. Because he hasn't done it doesn't mean he won't, right? He's what I realize that he is very thrifty, very conservative, but that might be because he has to be, because we haven't had anything to work with. Because if you look at, he's paid some money for some folks. DJ Chark, $10.5 million guaranteed, 1 year deal. CJ Gardner-Johnson, 8.5, 6 something guaranteed, 1 year deal. So he's not opposed to paying money when the time is right. So what I think, the right time, the right player, the right price, Brad Holmes will make a move. Is it going to be at the trade deadline? We shall soon see. If he makes a move, then he thinks that we can go all the way, that this player is going to help us do that. If he doesn't, he's probably going to wait to free agency. Well, he has no choice, but we'll wait to free agency, and I think he makes some moves then. But either way, the person he trades for is going to be part of this team for the next few years. That's guaranteed. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Which way do you think Brad Holmes is going to go? Which way would you like him to go? And did you get anything from his interview on The Insiders? You guys are awesome. Take care of yourself and each other. And as always, go Lions.